This podcast and every other podcast I make is brought to you by our supporters on Patreon. This particular episode was available on Patreon early, ad-free, and as an extended version. There's basically an extra discussion at the start that I didn't include on the YouTube version. Though, of course, this is not going to be the norm or anything. You definitely do not have to support, but it means a lot and it helps me create these unique, sort of niche games industry podcasts that I make. So thank you so much if you do support, and if not, check out the link in the description. Troy and Austin are maybe joining us? Troy said definitely yes. Austin said he'll try. Whatever
Watch this
that
space,
means.
folks.
Oh, Austin said I'll be there shortly. So I was going to ask you a really boring question, Mike, because I know we've spoken about it before, but I feel like everybody's talking about it, and I saw you tweet about it, thus you are implicated.
Oh no, can I get an AI to answer this question for me?
Yeah. So the AI art topic has come back. I don't really know how it resurfaced. I think everyone's using, from what I understand, people are using an app right? to make themselves look cool. And I never do that stuff because I don't care. I don't really know why. I have no justification.
I don't need to because I look like this anyway. I don't need to use the app.
Maybe part of it is I'm like, I don't need to see more of myself.
Oh no, I was doing a joke about being good looking, but I like.
I was taking it the opposite way. I was like, I don't need any more.
I don't need to see any more of this.
Keep it away.
I like that. I like that was your thought looking at my face. So I appreciate that. That's great.
It's just I thought you were being
no, it's cool in front of all these people as well.
You're very handsome. AI could never improve you.
Thank you.
That's what it is.
Thank you.
For me,
I appreciate it.
I just don't need to see more of myself. Like, I don't know. There's a lot of like social media trends people do where they like post a picture of yourself a year ago, and I'm like, it's the same. It's the same. Yeah. My face is already available enough. I'm good. And then I found out people were paying $8. I was like, why do you pay a fucking artist on Fiverr $8? You paying to do that? Oh my god, the amount of money that app must be making is just unfathomable. I couldn't believe people were paying for it. And artists can be a lot more expensive than $8, but you can pay artists on Fiverr $8 to make you something. Mind-blowing to find out people paying for it. So I guess it's some sort of app that you upload pictures of yourself. And you pick, again, I haven't used it, don't know how it works. You pick a scene or a circumstance, and it will create a version of you as a Roman or a princess or a fairy or something. But of course, as all apps like this one do, the way that it works is what it is doing is pulling from other art on the internet. So it is doing a broad image search and stealing pieces from other art, which I don't imagine will remain legal. Like, I feel like, does it count because it's transformative?
So it's fascinating legally. Like the conversations that are happening right now, like in the commercial world about this, because obviously
things will just be cheaper in theory.
Well, yeah, but like, and also like, there's as a tool, like, so for example, like Photoshop has filters now, just like you can use AI to like sharpen images or generate a depth map, which is really useful for various things in games. Like, there's lots of tech that's interesting with this.
I heard you could make the whole of Cyberpunk through AI.
You can make the entirety of Cyberpunk with an AI right now. You just describe make good game.
To be fair, what the guy said was, this is a Twitter thread that went semi-viral for negative reasons in game dev, as there is one every week.
Yeah.
He said something along the lines of, Cyberpunk would have been easier to make if they could have used AI for all the low-level stuff, which is definitely not how Cyberpunk works. But there is something funny about how, like, there are signs in Cyberpunk where they, like, misspelt Night City. You're like, now imagine how annoyed you were about that happening 1,000 times. And yes, you could help with, like, temp assets generation. Yeah. You can do stuff with maps. But there's a limit. There is a limit to that.
There is a limit. I think it will be useful as part of the tool set, like, for sure. I think the problem... So I think it's useful for filling in gaps. What AI is brilliant at currently is skimming all of the output of actual artists and using that to kind of plug gaps.
Yeah.
What's interesting is legally that, and ethically, arguably, that is, like, dodgy as fuck. Like, now, legally, there's an interesting... Yeah.
What is it legally?
So right now, no one owns anything. That's the interesting thing. Is either it exists, and there's going to be law on this, and there isn't currently. But my understanding and the advice I've been given, because obviously every developer has like started looking into like, can we use this for stuff? Especially those of us who are using IP and stuff. Like, there's definitely interesting kind of connections and stuff. But the advice I've gotten and the kind of conversations I've heard are basically that it exists right now between one of two things. It's a bit Wizard of Oz. It's, do you believe in the wizard or do you believe in the man behind the curtain? If you believe the spiel from these companies that AI is actually coming up with these images, if you believe that the AI is creatively able to do that, which I personally don't, but let's say we did, then technically an AI can't own anything. Legally, just like your dog can't own something, an AI can't own something.
My dog agrees to disagree.
Exactly, right. But legally, you could there's precedent, interestingly, of like animals can't own copyrighted things. There's that famous image of a monkey selfie where technically that image is owned by nobody because it was taken by a monkey.
Wow.
So therefore, yeah, it was a camera was stolen. Camera was stolen from a photographer in the jungle by a monkey who took a photo of themselves, and then the guy got the camera back. And then people used that photo. He doesn't own the photo, so he took people who were using that photo to court and said, "Hey, that's my picture of a monkey." And legally, no, it's not. A monkey pressed the button, therefore a monkey owns the picture, and as monkeys can't own anything, therefore that picture is not owned by anyone.
Humans suck, man. What, are we taking ownership away from monkeys? Come on.
I know.
We did that to the whole planet, to be honest.
That's fair. That's fair. I think on the scheme of things, copyright probably is low on the list. But that's the interesting thing. So if you take it as what is being said by the companies that do this, and they certainly would like you to
they
think
would try
this
to claim
way.
they own it, though, right?
Well, so that's the interesting. So if an AI made it, nobody owns it. If you argue, as I would, that actually this is a very complex style of montage where you're basically taking a bunch of other pre-made things and mixing them together, that's legally very dubious, because then you're starting to go into, well, is it parody? Is it fair use?
How many people own it? Then I can only speak to transformative stuff where it pertains to YouTube, is how I have the most knowledge on that for obvious reasons. And I would consider it to be transformative, but it's a little bit different when it's transformative for the sole purpose, at least for this particular app, of making money. It's not trying to express something. It's not making
You're
commentary.
not commenting on the original art,
right.
And you're selling it as well. You're making profit from. There's a lot. This stuff legally is going to be tested in the courts because someone will sue. Because what's interesting is the image that kind of, to me, kind of shows the illusion of all of this is there's a very famous picture. I think it's a girl in Afghanistan, and if I say it, you'll know the image of it's a very extreme close-up of a 12-year-old girl just kind of looking directly down the lens. You know the image. Yeah. If you type into a lot of these platforms, Afghan girl close-up, it will basically produce that image
because it's the most common result.
Because it's such a famous image and it's been populated. It's if you see that, it's like, well, then it definitely is pulling from that. It's not got any concept of what a girl is, what Afghanistan is. It's just collating an image search, essentially, and doing that.
Do we think that they're using Google?
And that's interesting. Well, they would have originally, the data sets, they would have basically, they were scrubbing. They probably used search engines. There's a lot of evidence that DeviantArt very early on was just scrubbed for all its content, because that's just obviously a massive repository of hand-drawn stuff. There's lots of stuff, and in fairness, a lot of the early pioneers of this space, because they were, technical people who were making something interesting, and it is a very intellectually interesting, cool thing.
Totally.
They were very public about what they were doing. They were saying, well, we're using this because this is publicly accessible. Hackers and coders will grab data from wherever. It's when it gets to the stage we're at now where other people are coming in and kind of commercializing the outcome of that product.
Right.
That's where those questions start to come up. But there's definitely the argument that if this is a hobbyist's cool thing, then no problem.
A really
once
cool
money
example
starts to come
I've
in,
seen,
it gets very complicated.
I follow this, I guess would be a dressmaker on Instagram, who'd be a very small business based in LA. And they put some terms into some AI art and got dresses and then made them. And it's incredible. The dresses are so beautiful because they'll put in I guess it's probably magical fairy dress covered in flowers or something. And then They get the like weird kind of obscure AI art look and make it into a dress, and they're stunning. And like I'm like, that's a very cool use of this because it's giving you the concept art. But they actually even credit a lot of their dresses and say designed in partnership with AI or whatever, because they're not completely concepting them themselves. And I'm like, that's awesome. And I also, while I do think everybody dunking on the idea that Cyberpunk would have been like they made it sound like it would have had way less dev time or would have been cheaper or without flaws if they'd used AI art, which is absurd. There are many cases in which AI is super helpful for game
100%. And I actually don't think that core supposition that you can do a lot of automated work on games. There's already some amazing like texture processing. We saw a very rough early version of this with that GTA remake that came out that I know got a lot of criticism, but that was just like draft one of that stuff. It's very easy to imagine that that's going to get better, and that's cool. And
I think it'll
will
ship like
up.
that. That's what the internet told me.
But I think I think there's room for those tools in the hands of artists. What I didn't like about that thread was it kind of implied that you could actually get rid of a lot of the dev team.
Yeah.
Well, but no, also like writing and you know, and there's some good OpenAI. This OpenAI thing people are using to kind of do text and kind of create dialogue. It's a nice facsimile. It's a cool illusion, but it's not writing. Like, and it's kind of you read the stuff that it comes up with, and you're like, that's really impressive for a computer. But like, you wouldn't hire someone who had that writing as a sample in there. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, does temp writing ever get used? I've never known of anything having temp. I mean, we'd have temp writing in terms of like, this is the first draft of writing that's made it into this, but I don't know of like temp writing.
I could see it being used for filler. I could see a situation where if you've got like a big open world game and you want and you've got like text to speech or something, and you just want you want anyone you walk up to in the street to have a line to say, and you just need to generate basically anything. The stuff this AI I think will initially be very useful for is low quality, high frequency. If you need lots of something and it doesn't matter if it's shit, you can get an AI to do it, and it will be relatively successul. Hey Austin, welcome to the Thunderdome.
Hi Austin.
We're talking about AI and how it's coming for your job.
As well it should.
All that. So I actually haven't seen any of the writing AI stuff. I've heard of it because I've had people like, oh, have you read this? Apparently there was like a fake news article written by an AI that people were talking about, but AI writing. I think, look, if these tools make people's jobs easier, great. If it makes things more efficient, so that leads to less crunch, great. That's awesome. We like that. I don't know if that's a reality, but that sounds wonderful, and I'm in support of it. It's the notion that it would take people's jobs away is something that I feel like we're concerned about every 10 years in some new way, and if it's possible, then it's inevitable, ultimately, I think, and it's terrifying and terrible. I definitely do not feel positively about that.
My issue is I think games are incredibly complex machines, and I think a lot of what currently people are getting excited about works in isolation. Like, you can generate 3 paragraphs of a bad story and share it, and that's very impressive, or you can generate an image where the hands are a bit wonky but it looks generally okay. Once you try and slot things together and make like a game or a movie or a book or, you know, an actual unit of, you know, content or entertainment, I think that's where it falls down. I think it's a really interesting Rorschach test.
They'll do the thing you're talking about where someone will make an AI game and we'll be like, this is impressive for an AI, but as a game we'll be like, it'll be probably pretty similar to that. You could have a full game made by AI every single facet of it. I don't doubt
and every game developer, every AAA game developer in the world will be looking at that game and going, is there anything in this game we can claim copyright ownership of, and can we sue the makers of it?
That is a good point. Yes, every corporation who's ever made any art. Because if anything in that game looks like Kratos,
or, you know, which it will, because there's a lot of images of. Let's not pick on a game we actually worked on.
Yeah, can we do Halo?
Disney.
The Master Chief.
It's like, but the second stuff starts to look like, you know, like something that someone owns, then there'll be a really interesting legal case.
Which I guess means
I certainly don't want to be one of the people involved in that.
Do they have to build another AI to then copyright check the other AI, or does that just have to be done by hand, which means a human's making it anyway?
I mean, that is the arms race. This is what you just said about the inevitability of an outcome. If it's possible, it will happen. And yeah, I mean, isn't there some of that with deepfakes? I know, like, there's now a really well, first of all, the way you train an AI is you create a test for that AI, and then you have the AI try and beat it, which so intrinsically in an AI process is a testing process. And basically the AI is just constantly trying to, it's adversarial. It's trying to kind of trick itself. But then you also now do get, like, there are deep fake detecting AIs. Because just to do exactly what you're saying of, like, trying to skim and find that data. What's interesting again is because an AI doesn't fundamentally have any understanding of what it's looking at, because it's not got a holistic human mind. You get very weird false positives. So there's lots of really good examples of this in terms of, well, not good examples, terrible examples of this from, like, a racism point of view, where AIs, if you write into most of these AIs untrustworthy person, it's not going to show you a white guy. And there's stuff like that where it's kind of rebuilding and
the Google search algorithm
the AI
does
is
that
racist.
too.
It's repeating what the data set it's seen has provided.
Well, yeah, and I mean, that's an interesting thing. Again, if you Google unprofessional hairstyle, it'll give you a bunch of pictures of black women.
Yeah.
And you can be like, well, the algorithm isn't racist. You're like, well, if it's curated by a bunch of individual humans, then yeah, it kind of is.
It's almost like systemic racism is a real thing, and we should all look to address it. But anyway,
as a podcast full of white people, I don't know about that.
Yeah, we're doubting in such territory, but I do think there's an interesting, because the point I'm making is that the AI is very cool and very clever, but it's also phenomenally stupid. It will just basically echo whatever patterns. There was an interesting thing, an interesting discussion on the art side, I think a couple of weeks ago, where people were noticing that there were, like, leftovers of signatures on artwork.
I saw that too.
You were seeing some of that. And there's kind of two schools of thought there. One is, it's just showing itself too easily. The other is the AI is so stupid that it thinks in order for something to look like good art, it has to have a little squiggle in the corner. And is that kind of like, again, it's not... This isn't something holistically intelligent. This is something that's learning pattern recognition at a ridiculous level. And you can get very pretentious about that and go, all humans are pattern matchers. It's like, yes, but you know what a dog is. You know what I mean? Like, you have a concept of a world outside the data set you're currently presented with.
I'm sure I've said this on this show before. And if I haven't, incredible. I took a tour of what used to be like an old porn studio, and they were telling us about butthole recognition AI, where they had an AI that would auto-detect
like a fingerprint,
an anus, and lighten it. So they were auto-bleaching buttholes via AI.
As a post-process. Oh, that's awesome.
In post. Yeah, like years ago too. This is a long time ago, and because otherwise people were having to lighten buttholes frame by frame. Can you imagine?
Goodbye to monetization, by the way. That was fun while it lasted, but like that's awesome. That's fascinating.
No, we made it 22 minutes in. We're okay. You can't do it in the first 10. Is that how it works? Okay. I held my butthole till 23 minutes.
You clenched until the right moment.
Yeah, so I think there are probably AI technologies like that.
For the record, I am 99% sure that you have not told that story before.
No, I think that is original Play Watch Listen content. We just achieved that. That's amazing.
That kind of AI is making a very tedious job for a human a lot easier, and it isn't actually hurting any artist unless one of the stars did not want to.
And you could make the argument that it is empowering the artists within the porn industry to do other things, right? Like I think I've said this on the show before. My first job in the industry is a button that takes 1.2 milliseconds in Unity now. Like that's ridiculous. Like that's the same thing, right?
You've said that before.
I didn't lose the job. I just got to do more interesting stuff.
Yeah. I don't think you've ever actually said what that button click job was, or at least I don't remember. I remember very much this, it's now a thing you click in Unity, but what was the actual task?
So it is a weirdly rudimentary AI, very like AI in a completely different sense to what people now mean by it. But basically, there's a thing in computer games called nav meshes. So when a character can't just you don't just drop a character into a world and they can just run wherever. You have to kind of define where the areas they can run to are.
Right.
And it used to be in the day. muggins like me would get hired to sit in a corner and by hand place the mesh on the environment of where the characters can go, and then you have somewhere for your AI to run around, and there'd be bugs, and those bugs they come back to you and whatever. Now what happens is most game engines, all game engines realistically, I think at this point, have nav mesh generation where they'll look at the environment and you'll set some rules of like what constitutes a staircase versus a drop, what constitutes a safe space, how big a area what's the width of a character to get through a doorway, and it'll just generate that nav mesh, which is a form of AI. It's basically kind of going through the level and building that out.
This is
and that was a job for entry-level idiots like me at the age of 21.
Also, I was going to ask, has there been any... I'll let you speak first, but has there been any facet of your job that, since you've been in the industry, has gotten easier by virtue of some kind of automation or AI? Control F makes my job a lot easier.
I mean, there are a million things that are modern software, especially DAWs, digital audio workstation, like Cubase, Pro Tools, Logic, Digital Performer, Ableton, et cetera, the software that composers use to write is loaded with features that make life orders of magnitude faster and more efficient and easier. And a lot of tasks, there are still, like, for example, the task of preparing sheet music. If I play in a piano part on my keyboard into the computer and it sounds back as a piano because I have a piano VST, virtual instrument, enabled. If I want to create sheet music from that and put it in front of a real pianist, the software makes that a million times faster than it was, but it's still pretty labor intensive because music notation is a very subjective sort of format. People would assume, I get asked this all the time, isn't there an app where I can just sing into my phone and it'll show me the sheet music? And it's like, if you define a bunch of parameters, like exactly what your tempo is and things like that, then that theoretically, we could get pretty close to that. Also, a friend of mine built a pretty slick thing called Imitone, which lets you sing into your USB microphone, and it will essentially, he used it as a way to drive VST, so you could essentially jam on a synth trumpet with your voice or whatever, which is pretty slick. But one of the things that he did that was pretty smart was he kind of quantized the octave you can set a scale, because obviously another challenge with the idea of, to your exact point, the software can be very smart and at the same time very stupid. If I sing, dun 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 dun, you know what I'm singing. You've heard it before.
The Die Hard theme tune.
The Die Hard theme tune. I can sing it pretty out of tune, wildly so, and it's the equivalent of reading a sentence that's just awash in typos and a
human still knows what it means.
Yeah, you don't have to be particularly clever with language or anything to be able to parse enormous amounts of grammatical and spelling errors or in things that defy convention. Same with music, whereas the software is going to say, oh, well, assuming an A440 tuning scheme and just intonation, then what you actually sang is 73 hundredths of a half step shy of G followed by, and it's going to give you this thing that's so accurate that it misses the forest for the trees. You know what I mean? So you need, currently there are tools that are kind of getting smarter about trying to recognize intention. Actually, it amazes me, the software I use now, I can quickly spin off. I just had this week. I had a flute player come over here, and I had my assistant make an actual part based of actual sheet music done properly, formatted nicely so it actually looks pretty. And I had it on the iPad for her to read. And then I realized I had accidentally not included a section. So I said, just give me a second. And I run the little script in my software, but it's ugly as all hell. It's the thing notices, for example, that if I lift the note off just ever so slightly early, instead of a note that looks like this, you get a note that looks like,
Audio listeners, play, watch, listen first. Austin appears to be writing with a pen and paper.
Yeah,
he's putting down the signature. I will describe the diagram.
Yeah. It's basically like,
okay,
it's
so you've got a
supposed
lot of dots with lines coming out of them. Some of them more squiggly than the others. There you go.
They like that, right?
AI could have done it better.
I could have done it way better.
Okay, so what are we looking at here, Austin?
If it's just hold a note, the top one is the intention. But if I hold the note ever so not like if I let off ever so slightly early, then the system is going to try to draw a note of the exact length, which is very cumbersome to look at. And so
that's what's... Sorry, go on.
No, so that's a perfect example of like, comparatively though, it's way less crude than it used to be. It's actually gotten really smart at recognizing intention and making sort of smart guesses. And
so
that's got a ways to go.
Oh god, I did it again. I'm sorry, I did interrupt you again. I'm so sorry. I'm excited because you're going into something which all the coders watching are screaming fuzzy logic at the screen, which is just a really interesting aspect that I think AI has kind of normalized or done something with. Is computers are very bad at dealing with vagueness or actually thinking with vagueness, and it's something you don't really think about. Humans are very good at is
kind of beautiful.
Is if it is beautiful. Austin holds a long note. Any other composer listening, they're not going to lean over to him and ask, "Did you mean one of these 5 formations?" They're going to say, "Oh, you're doing that."
Yeah.
And computing it's actually been a real challenge over the last couple of decades in computing of how do you make a computer program fuzzy enough that it can make a good choice. And you have fuzzy logic, which is used or I think was pioneered for optical character recognition. So reading text, reading handwriting, reading stuff like that, where essentially the computer goes, what's a 0 kind of look like, and kind of, but that's a very hard thing to define by code.
They add imperfections to the cars in like Forza and Gran Turismo as well, I believe, because if they don't have imperfections, even if it's like a scratch or a hint of dust, it makes them look less realistic. So they had to add
the Apollo 11 dirty rocket.
Exactly.
Yeah. Sorry, Apollo 13 dirty rocket. Yeah. But it works the other way. Is computers can't interpret stuff that's messy and dirty and scratchy, and that's one of the things that's been a big driver towards this current approach to AI. Is if you want computers to be able to see a car, so to use your example in reverse, which that people do because we want self-driving cars and all that stuff. You have to make a computer understand that a car is still a car, even if it's dusty and scratchy. And the way a lot of these AIs work, stable diffusion, you've probably heard the phrase, and that specifically is basically, it's kind of, if it's trying to make, Alanah, but painted in the style of Picasso, what it will do is it will take the photo of you, it'll actually massively blur that photo, and then try and work back in the detail in that kind of fuzzy way, because computers really struggle. It's taken a lot of work and a lot of kind of clever thinking by people to to teach AIs and to make AIs think in a vague, generalized way. So you can go, that's a car, even if the car is dusty or rotated 45 degrees or a different color than they're expecting.
Well, and think about our threshold for identification, like a car that has been smashed to pieces in an accident, and it has all kinds of parts missing and is mangled and bent into crude angles. Even a child would have absolutely no challenge in recognizing. And it's interesting how...
But what about a toy car, right? If you look at a photo of a toy car versus a real car, like what you look at that and you go, oh, that's a Hot Wheels or that's a real car. But could you define what the difference is that you're spotting and noticing? And making a computer, again, like understand those vaguenesses. It's all the shit that they did in Next Generation with fucking data, right? Like, but the complexities of the human
There's
experience
even an interesting
are
thing
impossible.
about, to make our first Star Wars reference, Andor. They actually do have some of the like matte painting backgrounds in that show, and they stand out as not looking as good as they did because now we have the ability to tell that it's a matte painting because it's such high fidelity. So you could tell it's a matte painting in ways that you used to not necessarily be able to detect. And that's a thing that I feel like I could not explain to an AI. Be like, is this a CGI background of matte painting or is it real? And now I can go, oh, that's a painting for sure. But that's
the genius, and that's the genius of the kind of this drawing from a massive pool is you don't have to explain to a computer what the difference is. Now a computer can look at every matte painting that was ever painted and learn that stuff itself. And that's where it gets, that's both very cool and obviously very kind of intimidating or especially challenging legally, and putting
AI
generated stuff in. Yeah.
I mean, look, we had this conversation so recently. I'm sorry, we're having the same conversation again, everybody. But it is, something that is affecting a lot of people, or a lot of people are interested in at the very least, to discuss as it evolves. And I'm very interested to see how it develops legally, because I don't know what the correct answer. I know what I feel ethically is that I think it is theft, effectively. At least the case of art, just stealing other art. But I don't know how a boardroom of old people in suits is going to figure that out. I feel like it's going to be a mess, but I'm very interested to see what happens and how the conversation evolves. And, I don't think automation is negative across the board. I think there are advantages as to what you're saying there for both of you, really. It makes your jobs easier. It didn't take your job away, or someone else's job away necessarily.
No, but that's interesting, right? Because in theory, the way this is all meant to work is we all have to work less because the computers make our lives easier. But unfortunately, when you look at the examples of like factories, basically what automation came for first, like factories, retail, those kind of lower skill jobs, it's not like it made those jobs any easier. It actually it decreased those jobs, and their hours basically stayed the same, and their pay ended up worse.
It's never going to make our jobs easier. It's always just going to give us more time for other work.
But the point is, under capitalism, to continue down the thread I've been on this whole episode, like, under capitalism, they will optimize that out. Like, you don't walk into a shop and see a bunch of more relaxed, creative retail assistants looking for exciting new ways to enhance the business. You see half the staff. Because of the automation going on with the self-service checkouts and stuff. It is funny, which I notice is less in America, like in the UK. Like,
they're everywhere here.
Self-service is...
It's all I've used since I've been home, self-service checkouts. Just playing Pentiment, just finished playing Pentiment a few weeks ago, and again, loved it. But a lot of that game is set in a scriptorium, which basically just rich people in Bavaria were paying people in a scriptorium to scribe books for them and create artwork. And that's a thing I didn't even really know existed. Like, I understood conceptually, but seeing it play out in a video game, I was like, I guess...
So was that like a commercialization of what was going on within the church? They basically created like a private...
That was how they made their money.
...sector.
Yeah. Yes, it was most of their income.
So the church would do that for rich people?
Yeah. Rich people would approach the church, and there would be artists and... I guess scribes, I don't really know if that's what they're called, in the scriptorium, who they would approach to make books for them and create certain artworks for them. And it's
funny how throughout history the church and commerce has because then you later, in the Renaissance, you have the church paying artists to produce great artworks for them. It's like, it's weird how the power of church has moved up and down.
Pentiment, very interesting church game. Very interesting church game.
I should probably play it. It sounds like my kind of shit.
They do such a good job. Again, I really love the game. They do such a good job of... Everybody's religious, including the characters you play. There's a lot of God bless yous and thank the Lord for this winter. But it never feels preachy in either direction. As an atheist, it never felt like I was being preached at, and I also feel like any Christians watching would also feel completely at home. And we summon Troy Baker. Any Christians watching?
We did. Home. You said the word Christian, and Troy just appeared. It's amazing.
Hello. They did really good job of that. It would have been. It must have been really hard, but it is a fantastic.
Well, presume that was just the reality of the time, right? The atheism was like a luxury that very few people could.
Yeah, I mean, it technically criticizes the church, but I don't know that it would be taken poorly. I'm really not sure. We're talking about Pentiment, Troy. Yeah.
It's the equivalent of saying, Bloody Mary 3 times. We talk about...
I said church 3 times for sure.
Yeah, like the idea of churches employing artists and you were like in the middle of a session and then suddenly you just warped out of it and don't know...
That's why you said...
How the fuck are you, Troy?
On the top of a beautiful mountain.
I just now pressed record. I want to know what this is all about, for sure. But to just kick everything off, I don't understand why, specifically with Windows...
Great, AI.
If...
It's what we've been talking about. Yeah, go ahead.
If I'm gone... If I don't turn my computer on for like 2 weeks...
Nothing works.
and I appreciate that Austin will get this joke more than anyone. It's almost like the knight in Last Crusade was like, I knew you would come. And it's, you have all of the updates that are needed.
Yeah.
Nothing works anymore. And it was like as if I had opened it. Oh my God.
I don't think I've ever left my PC off for 2 weeks.
I'm trying to imagine that
that's
life.
a whole other
what a
conversation
lifestyle
we could
that'd be to
unpack.
live. That sounds amazing.
Yeah.
I'm jealous of you, man. That sounds incredible.
I guess travel,
Jesus.
but
Yeah, I've been gone.
yeah, it's
I
fair.
haven't been here.
Yeah, that's fair.
But I am rather centered. Like, centered.
Emotionally.
You know what I mean?
Like cinematography, graphically, or like in terms of
Yeah,
soul,
like my framing.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Okay.
Yeah,
It's-
I'm really letting the team down today. This is beautiful painting, though.
Are you at an undisclosed location?
I'm in
That's
Australia,
100
and again,
I
I
was gonna
don't
say,
have
that's
a
hotel
mic
art.
stand. No, this is my parents' place. Is a lot of hotel art.
They got that. They stole that from a
They have
hotel.
a sign outside that I've been meaning to talk to my mum about. That says something like the beach called to me or something like that. Like it's some really just so cheesy, like I'm on
my
beach
gosh.
time type of sign. I'm gonna be like, Mum, we need to talk
Oh.
about the
That
beach
works.
time sign. We really gotta talk about it. That she's otherwise got. She has 18, I think, bonsais. Big fan of bonsais, growing her own, trimming them back.
That's almost a real tree.
Wait, I don't
could also
understand
put it
how
up
someone
there.
could have 18. I thought you're only allowed, not allowed.
legally. My thing
Yeah.
is she has to water them daily. How the fuck?
Ma'am,
They're hard to look
please.
after.
Go
I've
anywhere.
killed several bonsai
How many
trees.
bonsais do you
100%.
have in here?
It is a lot. They're beautiful, but I would never because it's way too many goddamn bonsais. Automate watering
McCluskey,
plants.
search this
I'm
house.
gone for 3 weeks and I'm worried about my plants dying. And I was like, I don't know what the solution to that is. I guess they just die. I put globes in
Oh,
some
are
of
you
them,
kidding me? No. First of all, they have...
but I used them.
It's
like
the
the
easiest
bowl
way.
with a
I used
tube,
them, but I
right?
don't think
got
it's going to
those,
be
yeah.
long enough. For the ferns that need to be watered
Okay.
every 3
Do you
goddamn
trust
days.
any of your neighbors?
I was gonna
And
say,
my
there's
friends
such
and
a-
I'd have to ask an hour.
No.
There are
Yeah,
human
but-
beings that
But I
offer.
am worried about human
Any
beings
friend-
overwatering my plants.
Nature's going
Any
as
friend
humans.
that you're like, hey, would you come in and would you please water my plants? Any person that says yes to that,
You wouldn't want in
you
your
do
home.
not want in your house. They are going through all your shit. They're like, yeah, I
It's
would
fair,
love to
it's
do
fair.
that. Absolutely.
In
Yeah,
hindsight,
of course.
shouldn't have sourced
Cameras.
that from Patreon.
It's also going to say
Here's
what?
the
That's a
perk.
tier.
You get to come into my house. Those
What
are
are
bodily
you guys
fluids on my
offering?
bed.
Come on now. Come water my
Never.
plants.
I would
please.
never do that.
I did offer for
Any-
someone
it-
else. I did offer
Nope.
to, yeah. Just one
Nope.
plant though.
Nope.
I have 30
I did have a
plants.
stint dog sitting for a friend every time he would leave town for many years.
Dog sitting is different.
Yeah, I agree.
It was not. It was quite imposing though. I would have to basically move into his place for like a week and a half, and it was.
Get to know the dog, become familiar with it.
Did he pay you?
Form a bond.
Train with it.
No, I mean
Yeah.
it was
Now
one
you're
of my
ready.
closest friends, but still, it was like a big. Every year would entail going over to that place. 2 huge dogs that just
Again, this
needed
just
to be
still
let out a
sounds
lot.
great. Still sounds good.
Oh, I mean, I enjoyed it. He lived right at the entrance of Runyon Canyon, so I would take the dogs up to the top of the canyon every morning, and it was
You know
not
what? You
bad.
can automate dog food now. They have automated dog feeders and water bowls that dispense more water so that the dogs can eat.
Yes. However, those are people that should not have dogs.
I do
And
not
what
have
happens
one
if
of
the
those.
power goes out though as well? Like
There you
if
go.
make it, like
Good point. Yeah.
or
Yeah.
something goes wrong. I would never trust a piece of technology to keep.
We,
an animal alive.
I don't think it's to
had
keep them alive. I think it's
24
to
hours
just
to feral.
no. I think it's just to
Will
help
Ferrell.
them when you're when you're out for a day. I don't think it's to keep the dog alive
Oh, for like
a week.
a day. Oh yeah, fair enough.
'Cause
Yeah,
that-
Next 24 hours, they'll have a deal with Netflix.
Exactly.
The second
Park
the
it on
dogs
this joke.
realize that they can automate us out of the process, Alana, we're done.
Self-aware.
That's not true. They love
Yeah.
us. I think.
Terminator was wrong. It wasn't
We are
Skynet that
still
was coming
somehow
You
on
online.
saw the
topic.
Matrix, right? It's like that with dogs. Yeah.
Well, Troy, now you've joined us. I had just come up
Spiritually.
of asking spiritually. We
centered.
called upon you by mentioning the church. I had asked Austin if there are facets of his job that have become easier as a result of AI, like positive things. Is there any
Oh,
part
shit, let's
of
get
what
into
you
that.
do that is easier as a result of AI rather than like it replacing you or whatever?
I would have to probably consult with people that deal with all of my bullshit on the back end.
Right.
because AI input is still kind of analog.
Yeah.
For what I do. There is, however...
What about the directing side of things that you do? Well, no,
there's no AI that's really
pretty
going
manual,
to...
isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, it's all manual. It's all about what we do with the stuff that we're making. Then, like, that's why I really don't have... I don't do trends. I really don't. But I was like, this is interesting, the whole Lensa thing. And
is that the name of the app?
That's the app.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And I was like, oh, this is fun. You got me. You got me to spend $5 or whatever on you, and I have some fan fiction pictures of myself now.
You surely didn't have any of those otherwise.
Surely you have fan art. Surely there are people who've done fan art.
It was
some
remarkable
scary fan art.
how similar it was to mine.
Your own fan art of yourself.
Yeah. Wow, 1-to-1.
Just looking in the mirror.
It just stole his art and sold it back to
I was like, hey, you son of a bitch.
The AI's like, there's so much art of Troy Baker on the internet for
but
us
I
to use.
made some money off of it that I spent myself. But this is the thing, and like my wife is a photographer, and as we have seen, like the number one thing that every time they come out with a new iPhone, I can't wait to burp through this entire thing. This is not an endorsement, but I really love this. It's this great kombucha that doesn't have any sugar really in it. And I believe in good gut health. And so I've been drinking this. But, Lord Almighty, I'll shake the rafters.
Up and down, or what are we talking there?
Up and down.
Yeah.
Up and down.
Whiz pops.
Great.
I have vertigo. That was a visual joke for you Spotify listeners. It wasn't a good one.
No, it was a joke that existed, though.
But, and I apologize. The thing that about that whole app with Lensa is like, this is an interesting thing to show to me how much it's off. Because like my wife is a photographer, and if you look, the number one thing they talk about with whatever time they come out of the new iPhone or new Galaxy or new iPad or new Apple product or no one talks about the Galaxy, is the phone. Or is they never talk about the phone. They talk about the camera.
Yeah.
They talk about how great the camera is and that it's got a gajillion megapixels and nits and whatever the fuck they're pushing. And they talk about how you could shoot a movie now on this thing.
Brightness.
No, you can't. No, you can't. And if you ever were to, there's some stuff that I've shot that's like, wow, it looks really, really good. If you put that up against shooting that on an Alexa or an Ari Mini LF or whatever, you will see the difference. And it will be apparent. Not only that, but even with that camera, I can put the best camera in the hands of someone who's untrained, and it'll look like shit. And not only that, but even when you do have the best cinematographer, then you need people on the back end to be able to color time that and actually make sure that looks cohesive throughout the entire thing. And there's actually a feeling that there's a color palette to it as opposed to just what went in raw natively into the camera.
I've been taking color grading classes to learn to color grade because it's extremely hard, and it's been a month and a half, and it's still really fucking hard. And let me tell you, I can't color grade. That said, those new cameras are beautiful, and I like obviously you would agree with this. So I just want to say it for the sake of saying it is the new cameras are doing an incredible job, and it is a cool opportunity for anyone at home who wants to like try making something. Totally make your own short film on an iPhone camera, and that's rad. But it's not going to look cinema quality. It's not possible.
Well, ironically as well, there's a lot of AI now being used to make your photos on iPhone look better. There's actually a lot of automation of that stuff before you even see it.
Like
there's an AI pass.
It has like a I wouldn't know how to
layer that you can do.
And it's really good.
It's super cool.
But there's layers you don't even know about. Like there's layers to how that camera does stuff.
Yeah.
But even below that, like just the raw, if you just take a vanilla photo on iPhone, there's a degree of post-processing that's being done already on the image that's come through just because they know they can cover for your mistakes, basically.
Yeah.
And
or the mistakes
to that point, Alanah, is that what I do love is that never before has it been easier as a creator to make something.
Right.
And have it be something that is palatable. Austin can speak to this for sure. The number one thing that anybody who, if you ever do a short, the number one thing they tell you do not skimp on is audio. And the fact that it is $100 can get you an amazing sounding microphone to be able to capture the dialogue you need for your film or for your short or for your animated thing or for whatever. It's incredible what's available. So I'm not
something I take very seriously. Obviously,
yeah, and you move it constantly.
Never criticized for my audio at all.
I think that there's never been a better time to create. I just don't think that I'm not scared of AI, and maybe I'm naive, but I just don't think that it's like if I can be replaced, I probably should be. Then that means that there's something else that I need to do because nothing that I do is going to prevent that from happening. No,
I said that
earlier.
Standing
on ceremony.
Mine was if it is possible, it is inevitable. Effectively, if we can be replaced by AI, we will be. Yeah. I don't know that I agree with should, but we will be. I do think that is true. If we can be, we will be, and that's inevitable. And there's absolutely nothing we can do about it. It is just you have to adapt. Which wow, can you imagine what this conversation would have sounded like 20 years ago? Like if someone would have 20 years ago hear this podcast, they'd be like, "I'm sorry, what? Like how?" Are you
talking about the Steven Spielberg movie?
What the fuck's an iPhone made to start with? The one thing that's interesting to me, and we're already starting to see, and this happens with every major technology or technological breakthrough, is essentially like aesthetic styles kind of being associated with it or impacting the way aesthetics work. So the question I've got is, theoretically, what's really interesting is there's now this weird thing, which I think I've been predicting on this show for a while, and I think it's this AI is the next step in this, where basically it's getting cheaper than ever to make something photoreal, or cheaper than ever to make something that is hyper detailed in that way. And what's interesting to me about that is, and I guess I see this coming potentially for the voiceover side of things as well, is I wonder if once people start to get used to AI generated voices, I wonder if Troy's ever going to be in the booth recording and a director's going to say, could you just put a bit more AI spin on that for me? And we'll end up in a situation where I wonder if there's actually going to be like the influence of this stuff will actually start to come into so that creative humans are basically like emulating or being inspired by the aesthetics that are going to arise out of this new technology.
There's an analogy to that that's already very common, which is especially in the kind of blockbuster, big, epic sound, the trailer music thing. Sample libraries routinely they're so produced that if you're going for a thing that sounds super huge and gigantic, a real orchestra, even a huge orchestra, doesn't quite sound the same as the way the samples do. And so even on a production, like a Hans Zimmer production where there is basically no limitation on what you can spend in terms of number of musicians, how many days in the studio, et cetera, they are still routinely adding in the samples because it adds an aesthetic that a 100% live orchestra takes away from, and that the taste has become so accustomed to the sound of certain kinds of sounds that they become folded into it as a result.
That's exactly
so it's not AI, right? But it's kind of a proxy of a similar idea that there's a thing that is artificial that people go, can't this sound more like that?
I wouldn't even put an ethical argument on that. I just think that's really fascinating. I think that's just intriguing from like a creative point of view that's happening.
I mean, I joked about this earlier, but the part of my job that technically AI makes infinitely easier, and yet I still find it tedious, is Control F. Having to find something. There was a part during Ragnarok where I had to like look through all the scripts and find every reference to like father or something.
The word boy.
I had done that before, just out of curiosity, really? That one actually. Because,
13 million instances.
For a really long time, Atreus was named Boy. For a very long time, they didn't have a name, so he was just Boy in the scripts, which is very funny to read because those still exist. Yeah, it was like Control Effing to find something, and it's still, you get 100 results or whatever, but you can tab through them. The thought of having to do that without Control F could have taken me months for something that ended up taking like 2 days. Like that is a tremendous amount of work that a robot helped me do way, way faster.
Are you hip to, what is this program called?
The answer is almost definitely no.
It's a writing program.
I've heard of that.
Yes.
Microsoft,
it's Miss Word. Miss Word.
Google Docs.
There is a... Damn it! I'm gonna find it real quick because I get emails from. It's like Pro Writer or something like that, or
Writer's Room
something
Pro?
else where
Celtic's Final Cut Pro.
Pro Tools.
It's not Final Cut Pro. Sorry, Pro Tools.
God Almighty! there is a program that basically will analyze what, regardless of you inputs, like this is a script, this is a resume letter, and it will literally audit and grade your the writing style. It will show you where you can improve.
I use Metacritic myself.
That's after the fact.
I know. It's
Interesting. And you believe it to be trustworthy?
I haven't used it yet. I was just curious if you guys have seen this, but it came highly recommended. What the fuck is it called? Man.
That's interesting.
Is that like similar though to like the person who uses like a thesaurus to like find fancier words for things? Does it kind of trigger that kind of behavior? Is it? I assume it's smarter than that. It's doing.
Did that so much as a kid.
I had a mate who did. He did a spell check on one of his history essays, and he didn't bother like check. He just went with the first suggestion, and the teacher stood in front of class and read out the entire essay. And it was called the reevaluation of presence in Prussia, and it was just the most
Presents.
Yeah. And it was just like,
wow.
Pro Writing Aid. It is something that is one account, 150 hours of writing training. So what they do is they have like a tool, but then they also have like they're a platform for learning and becoming a better writer.
Interesting.
So I think that there's merit to that because not everybody can go to USC. Look, I just got.
But who gets to define what's good writing in that equation?
The author,
the person you're sending,
whoever made it, right? I
yeah,
guess,
whoever made it. But I mean, I just had the opportunity to I dabble in writing because I want to understand the process of it. I don't consider myself a writer, but I do want to be able to speak to it. And I feel like if I'm ever going to critique anything or try to adjust it, I better know what it's like to have sat down and actually wrote something so that I know what I'm asking.
That would be written.
And through that, I've developed I like writing out ideas and seeing how it's possible. What'd you say? You just had a joke that I missed.
She's an arsehole. Ignore her.
All right.
If she needs someone to come in and artificially bleach her in this school, this is horrible.
No, you said wrote, and I said it would be written, based on the context of the conversation we were having.
Something that I wrote.
No, you said you wanted to have sit down and wrote. I said it would be written, so I was giving you an AI correction. It doesn't matter at all. Say whatever you want.
I want to be very clear, Troy. I need you to know, as your friend, I was laughing at her, not you, in that moment, because that was a fucking dick move.
Dick move. I'm down for dick moves.
Fine, say whatever you want.
So I sent off this thing to Craig Mazin. I was like, "Hey, dude, I'm gonna pull a friend card and go. Will you read this and tell me what you think?" And he says, "Do you want light, medium, or extra crispy?" And I was like, I want extra crispy because I don't learn from light or medium. He was like, okay, that means I'm going to critique this as if it's something that I wrote. And a couple weeks went by, and he texted me while I was on the train with Austin and Andrea from Milan to Venice. He goes, "You free?" And I went, "Yeah, I got 15 minutes." An hour and a half later,
Andrea and I are sitting there, and Troy just goes, "I'll be right back," and stepped and went and sat away, and then.
And I came back and I was like,
came back with a pale skin,
and not a single one of them was this kind of like, to taste, I don't really like this. It was like, he goes, "I think you have something here that's really good, but I just have, my biggest problem is with your fundamental premise." I was like, "Oh, okay, just that?" Because if you can solve that problem, I think you're onto something. But nothing is ever going to.
Let me tell you, everybody thinks that they can write, like, you go to university for it and do it for 10 years, but everybody
also,
thinks
if he didn't respect the work, he wouldn't have given you 2 minutes, let alone
that's true.
Hour and a half.
Relationship alone is what got me that audience for sure, and feedback.
I think you'd have gotten a polite. That's interesting. I think if he hadn't had any respect for what you'd given him, I don't think you'd have had an hour and a half conversation. It would have been a very polite.
I agree with that as well. I also think that looking at someone like Craig, who is so passionate about writing, and I had to put myself in a different mindset because I asked him one time, I was like, "Do you have any? I need something to direct. Do you have anything you're just not going, any scripts you're not going to use?" He goes, "No. Do you think I just write for fun?" And I was like,
"No, I do.
I never thought about that." And he goes, "But here's the difference. Anything that he's going to write, where he's at now, is going to get made." So is this the thing that he wants to make? Because if he goes, here's my show.
I mean, I guess if that's his full-time job. I've written 2 screenplays, or 1.5 at least, and I have no intention of ever giving them to anybody because I wrote them for fun.
Right. But
I don't
he's
need
a different space. Most people don't. Most people think he popped up on Chernobyl. This guy's been writing for decades. Like, he's been on everything. So he's at the point now where he's like, no, this is what I do. This is my, I breathe this. Yeah. But it's more than just his job. It's like his purpose for being here. And once you achieve that level where it's like, if I sit down and I write something, I go, here, someone, Netflix, Amazon, HBO, someone's going to snatch that up and turn it into 4 seasons of television. So he's like, Jesus Christ, I'm not going to just sit down and haphazardly write something. So I think that's what he also is like, I love talking about this. I love the critique. I love the process. I love teaching. He's very much of a teaching spirit. But that's something that no app or website can change. Like, no one can give you that years of experience.
And I also don't think a website or an app can give you the critique in a helpful way, because part of, I think, editing writers, which I've done for almost as long as I've been a writer, is knowing how to give actionable feedback to an individual person. You have to give the feedback based on who the person you're giving the feedback to, because you know how they'll understand things, you know who they are, you understand even sensitivities. That's part of editing, is you have to like make sure that you're conveying why the edit exists for some people. And AI is never going to be able to do that. There is a world where AI for writing could make people less interested in writing.
I do believe that the dispassionate nature by which that is dispensed can be very helpful. Because sometimes when someone goes, it was like, oh, what? If there's too much emotion that's put into that, if there's too much sensitivity put into it,
that's bad,
as opposed to...
That's a lesson I had to learn as a director for sure. Like, I was 100% like taking it very personally whenever I had to give negative feedback to someone. Yeah, that's definitely.
Craig was like, "Oh no, this is bad. You shouldn't do this. Let me tell you why." That's the other thing is like how would an AI rate a Coen Brothers script or Cormac McCarthy novel?
It wouldn't. An AI is not going to know the premise or theme of a piece of written work for a very long
style.
Time.
But not only that, it's not even premise or theme. It's just the style is like, oh, this sentence is too short. You know, or this character doesn't speak enough. Like if you
said wrote when you meant written. The dumbest program in the world could make that observation. Try the stupidest,
like if you gave
dumbest piece of program.
I kind of want to try it. I don't know what these programs are, but I kind of want to try get a bunch of like what would an AI think of Black Swan or Mother?
Oh yeah,
they'd be like, what the hell is this? It doesn't make any sense. Garbage.
Or as much as I don't like it, Pulp Fiction. You know what I mean? Like, it's something that is super stylized dialogue.
What is a Royale with cheese? They wouldn't understand what a Royale with cheese was. It would fall apart the first sentence.
You mispronounced this word. It is royal. You spelled it incorrectly.
50% of Americans misspell this word at every.
The thing though is also, I do believe that it is a helpful tool, but it is not. It is not even a Craig Mazin is not going to make me a writer. It's not going to produce a good script. I will be able to learn some things that I didn't know before. And the joy that I have right now is going back to something that I thought was pretty finished. I was like, I think this is pretty good to go. And
that's what I use Metacritic for. Yeah.
No, it's like not at all, man. So I think that there's all I think it's a yes and. I think AI and coaches and classes and doing it, that's the main thing. Yes,
I think I'm in support of an assistive tool. And the more accessible creating stuff gets, the better across the board. There are a lot of AI uses for disabled people with various disabilities, and that's fucking awesome. The more of that we can get, the better. I think the commercial aspect of the art, that app that we've been talking about, I feel like I'm not comfortable with it. And like I said earlier, just interested to see how the law actually deals with it? Question mark? Who's got the barking dog? Is that you, Troy?
It's 100% 8-bit that I just don't understand.
It's a guard dog.
The most affable.
He's going for it.
No, he's not. He's I think he's like, his eyesight is going.
How old is he?
Because like he barked at me the other day. He's 10. He's like,
He's old,
sorry, man. Ronan came over the other day, and Travis and Laura's son, and he and Traveler are like 2 months apart, and Traveler has like a Darth Vader mask, and so Ronan was like, I want to put that on, and 8-Bit was like, no, I don't know what you are. You're a weird shape.
I have like 3 before we goes that I would love to do this episode. I've watched half of Andor. I was thinking about doing Austin, you also played Immortality, but I've decided to go with Troy. The Last of Us trailer is so good. It is so
let's
good.
get into it.
And we don't have a ton of time, but
all right.
Dear God.
I really have to give it to Craig and Neil, because that is one of the best, and people don't even realize, I think, necessarily how good it is, but you will after you've seen the show, because what they condensed into 2.5 minutes was the entire show. They set up the characters, the world, the tone, expectations. They put everybody on display, and it's just, I've seen up to episode 5, and I can tell you right now, you get to episode 3, you're done. That you are standing on your desk, oh Captain, my Captain, because it is what it sets up in the first 2 episodes. It introduces you to the world if you have no idea what it is. It takes all of your expectations and just
is it weird for you to watch? Like, do you have like a weird, like, because your relationship to that interesting? Because like you have so much ownership over that character in that universe, really.
Yeah, but I really appreciate a lot of people have been very vocal about their support and everything, and like there's only one Joel for me, and I'm like, I hope not. God, I hope not. If that's the truth, then we all failed to create a character. It has to be bigger than us, and that's the beauty. Is Pedro and I were backstage at the Game Awards. Whatever.
It would be like a musician writing a song that should never get a cover. Like it's like that's like the hallmark that you've written a good piece of music. If someone can change it and make it their own. Yeah, like there's
and not only that, but also it's like, I kind of like this version better. It's like, yeah, that if the song is made better by interpretation, that is a great song. Yeah. That is an amazing. If it can be done with strings, an acoustic guitar, a cappella, reggae, it's like, that's a great song. You made something that is.
To be fair, you were describing one version. That was all the ingredients of your ideal cover.
I was just thinking, I'd love to see
gospel
reggae
choir,
also. That'd be
amazing. Metal. But being able to tell Pedro is like, he said something. He goes, "Your DNA is inextricably tied with our performance." And I said, "Well, we're just fawning all over each other." And I said, "Well, what you proved is that this character is bigger than any one performance."
Very sweet.
Man, it's also earned. And goddamn Bella Ramsey. Holy She's a very good actress. Shit. People don't even know. She is coming for you. She is so effortless.
That's terrifying.
It is. She is terrifying. Like instantly.
I saw her.
She is behind you right now.
Austin, don't turn around.
Yeah, exactly.
She's gonna murder you. You're murdered. You're dead. It's already done. The thing that Pedro, like, you can see Pedro, you're like, got it. I see him in that role. What you don't get with knowing anything about Bella Ramsey is the 15,000 layers of shit that's happening underneath every choice.
Yeah.
And there is a physicality that I feel I'm inspired by Pedro's performance as Joel.
That's awesome.
I wish that I could go back and do some things different.
Should we just get all the spoilers out right now?
In Last of Us 2? You're going to be in Last of Us 3, right, Troy?
We'll
4.
have.
I'm going to skip 3.
They'll do a Last of Us Part
PS7.
1.2 where they redo the performances in 10 years.
Yes.
Like Kingdom Hearts. Yeah.
Just like Kingdom Hearts.
And it'll be Pedro. I was like, you get into this suit, motherfucker.
Yeah, I just thought,
you deal with that.
I had this thing where with a lot of media, like I really think The Last of Us is just so like perfect in a way that I wouldn't change anything. So initially my reaction to the TV show was, why do I need this? But you did it, and it's why? Why do we need more? And then watching the trailer, I was like,
reaction.
Did you ever listen to like this is the shittiest example. I'm trying to give a better version of this, but
an AI could probably come up with a better
on the
example.
way to, I believe someone's going to fact check this, and please feel free to correct me, but on the way to either the Grammys or the MTV Music Awards, disparate members of Bon Jovi got stuck somewhere. The only two that were able to be there for their performance was John Bon Jovi and Richie Sambora. And they're like, what do we do? We've got this hit album that we're supposed to perform. And so Richie Sambora goes, I got an acoustic. And they're like, you want to go out on stage in front of millions of people watching and everybody that's there in attendance for you being the new glam metal band or whatever we're going to call you, and you want to perform acoustic? And that performance was so successful, it started the MTV Unplugged.
Wow.
And then we have every other iteration of some of the most, I mean, like Tears from Heaven for Eric Clapton.
Layla,
the Layla was like, that's the preeminent version that everybody knows now, more than the Derek and the Dominoes version.
Yep.
So what I'm saying is that Bon Jovi was really cool. There is something that inherently happens when you go, I don't need a better version of that. It's like, well, have you ever imagined it like this?
Yeah.
What if you didn't have these constraints?
Basically, he's
Your
calling
point is
you
you're
out.
dude stuck in traffic. Yeah.
I think he's calling you out for a failure of imagination, Alana. Is
Well,
what I'm gathering
even
from
I
this.
feel
It's
that
like-
having seen the
Ooh.
it's a garage door. Freaked me out. I was like, oh, quick.
Bella Ramsey appeared in that frame.
Hank, 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 Hank. She's gonna be free.
No,
it took her longer
watching the
because
trailer,
she's in
I was
Australia.
like, you know what?
It's it's
It still was fast though. Watching the trailer, I was like, you know
fairness,
what?
you handle
moves
your
fast.
fear.
She moves
She's
fast.
that
Famous
good.
for it. She's that good.
You handle your terror very well. Ooh.
Well, it's because
We
I
need you
did think.
to
Oh, I'm done.
I
take
did
that up
think
a notch.
earthquake because I'm so used to LA, and then I was like, oh, we don't have those here. I don't need to. There's no fault line here. I don't need to worry about that.
You're not still scared of earthquakes, are you?
Oh yeah, they scare the shit out of me.
Okay.
Let me tell you, just to add another side note to this
Like on a
conversation.
scale from Kitten to Bella Ramsey, where do you put
I can't fall
earthquakes?
back asleep,
Yeah.
so they're like, I'm more scared of Bella Ramsey now. But like,
Oh, well, I mean, that's just
close.
calibration.
It's going for you.
No, I can't fall back asleep if there is one. But yeah, I've seen so many coyotes on the street recently, just walking around. And I don't have the know-how. I could tell you what to do with a snake or a spider. I don't know what to do about a coyote. What do I
They're so
supposed to
easily
do?
scared.
You just yell at them?
Make noise. They're so easily scared.
Okay.
Yeah.
One of them followed.
Would they?
It's like a fox. Is about the same size as a fox.
They're
apparently.
bigger than a
Like, how
fox,
big are we
but very
talking?
skinny.
They're bigger than a
big
fox.
ears. Yeah, they're like medium
Yeah.
dog size. I think my dog's a little
Yeah.
bit
I
bigger.
don't think
and
they would ever-
One of them followed us.
Would they ever attack a person unless they were?
Yes,
like,
there's a story
rabid or
recently
something?
about a coyote pulled a little girl out of the back of a fucking car, Austin.
But child, maybe something that they'll clock as easy pickings. But an
but
adult,
I'm worried about
I
the
don't
dog.
think
I'm
they-
worried
Was
about
the
my
child
dog.
okay before we continue down the joking path? Is
I
the kid okay?
believe the child is okay. Yes.
Child is okay. Child was raised by them.
Then Bella
I was
Ramsey
going to say,
showed
it's the
up.
And it's
TNT you
now-
got to worry about with the coyotes.
It's gonna
They got-
be
they
a
that
got-
new show
child's
on
name
Netflix.
is Bella Ramsey.
That's better.